Shabbat Shalom, guys. We have a lot to cover this evening, so we are just going to go ahead and begin praying, and then we're going to get to it. Yahweh, guide us in your wisdom and lead us in your way, and open up your word to those who lack understanding. And thank you, Yahweh, for the knowledge that you have given me and the fellowship that I've found with my brothers and sisters. And it is all thanks to you. Praise El Shaddai, Yahweh. And keep your servants strong in your truth, and sharpen our swords and make us wise. And send us your son, Yahusha, to comfort us. He leads his sheep back to the flock. And without him, all of this would be for nothing. And we are eternally grateful for our Mashiach, Yahusha, and we love him so much. Make us like your son, Yahweh. He is the goal. In Yahusha's name we pray. Amen. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Torah Truth Fellowship of Yahusha. I am your host, Brianna, and this is the Torah portion. Last week, we had to cut the Torah portion short because it was a little bit longer, actually a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. So we made it to chapter 2, line 10. This week, we are going to pick up in chapter 2, line 11, and we're going to try to make it to chapter 6, line 1. So let me go ahead and get back to where I was last week, and we will start there. And we will kind of do like a quick recap too about what we talked about last week. All right, so we are on Exodus chapter 2, and we're going to go over lines 11 through 14. But before we get into that, last week we ended last week's video talking about how Moses was at some kind of party or function or whatever that Pharaoh was having, and his mother was holding him, and he grabbed Pharaoh's crown off of his head and he put it onto his own head. And they were trying to decide after that what to do with Moses, because Bil'am, the magician, told Pharaoh that he acted with cunning and that he knew what he was doing, and that this was the child that Pharaoh had a dream about previously. And Bil'am interpreted the dream to him. So this week we're going to start in Exodus chapter 2, and we're going to read lines 11 through 14. And it came to pass in those days, when Moshe was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens. And he spied a Mitzri smiting an Ivri, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Mitzri, and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Ephraim strove together. And he said to them that did the wrong, Wherefore smite your fellow? And he said, Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Intend you to kill me as you killed that Mitzri? And Moshe feared and said, Surely this thing is known. So this is when Moses had to flee Egypt. He killed an Egyptian man, and it was like the talk of the town. So first of all, though, let's learn why Moses killed this Egyptian man. And the book of Jasher actually gives us some insight as to why Moses killed this man. So Jasher 76, lines 1 through 16. And when Moshe was 18 years old, he desired to see his father and mother, and he went to them in Goshen. And when Moshe had come near Goshen, he came to the place where the children of Yasharel were engaged in work, and he observed their burdens, and he saw a Mitzri smiting one of his Ivri brethren. And when the man who was beaten saw Moshe, he ran to him for help, for the man Moshe was greatly respected in the house of Pharaoh. And he said to him, My Adonai, attend to me. The Mitzri came to my house in the night, bound me, and came to my woman in my presence, and now he seeks to take my life away. And when Moshe heard this wicked thing, his anger was kindled against the Mitzri, and he turned this way and the other. And when he saw that there was no man there, he smote the Mitzri and hid him in the sand, and delivered the Ivri from the hand of him that smote him. And the Ivri went to his house, and Moshe returned to his home, and went forth and came back to the king's house. And when the man had returned home, he thought of repudiating his woman, for it was not right in the house of Yaakov for any man to come to his woman after she had been defiled. And the woman went and told her brothers, and the woman's brothers sought to slay him, and he fled to his house and escaped. And on the second day Moshe went forth to his brethren, and saw, and behold, 2 men were quarreling. And he said to the wicked one, Why do you smite your neighbor? And he answered him and said to him, Who has set you for a prince and a judge over us? Do you think to slay me as you did slay that Mitzri? And Moshe was afraid. And he said, Surely this thing is known. And Pharaoh heard of this affair, and he ordered Moshe to be slain. So Elohim sent his angel, and appeared unto Pharaoh in the likeness of a captain of the guard. And the angel of Yahweh took the sword from the hand of the captain of the guard, and took his head off with it. For the likeness of the captain of the guard was turned into the likeness of Moshe. And the angel of Yahweh took hold of the right hand of Moshe, and brought him forth from Mitzrayim, and placed him from without the borders of Mitzrayim, a distance of 40 days' journey. And Aharon, his brother, alone remained in the land of Mitzrayim. And he prophesied to the children of Yasharel, saying, Thus says Yahweh Elohim of your ancestors, Throw away each man the abominations of his eyes, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Mitzrayim. And the children of Yasharel rebelled, and would not hearken to Aharon at that time, and Yahweh thought to destroy them. Were it not that Yahweh remembered the covenant which he had made with Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, in those days, the hand of Pharaoh continued to be severe against the children of Yasharel, and he crushed and oppressed them until the time when Elohim sent forth his word and took notice of them. Give me just a moment, guys. So, when Moses was 18 years old, he snuck over to Goshen to go and visit his parents. And when he got there, he saw an Egyptian man beating a Hebrew man. And the Hebrew man escaped, and he ran over to Moses, and he asked for his help. And Moses was very highly respected among the people. And he told Moses, he said, I need your help. This man, he broke into my house, he bound me up, and then he raped my wife. And now he's beating me, and he's trying to kill me. So Moses killed that Egyptian man. And the word spread, and Pharaoh heard about it. And at that point, Moses had already left, but he actually did not end up going to Midyan first. And that is also something that we are going to learn in the book of Jasher as well. And Pharaoh was going to send his captain of the guard to slay Moses, but the angel of Yahweh, aka Yahusha, appeared to Pharaoh in the form of the captain of his guard. And then he drew his sword out and cut his head off, showing Pharaoh that if you send this man after Moses, this is his fate. So the book of Jasher also tells us that Moses became the king of Kush, and he reigned there for about 40 years. And the children of Kush were at war with the children of Aram. And when the king of Kush left with his army, guess who was in the city? Surprise! Bil'am, the magician. That guy really got around. If you read the book of Jasher, that guy really got around. He was everywhere. Well, Bil'am conspired with the people of the city to fortify it and to not let the king of Kush and his men back in when they came back from war. Well, who wins the city back for them? None other than Moses. And now we're going to learn something else about Bil'am. And if you want the whole story, you can read it in Jasher chapter 72 and 73. So, but we are going to begin in Jasher 73 on lines 28 and 29. And Bil'am, the magician, when he saw that the city was taken, he opened the gate, and he and his 2 sons and 8 brothers fled and returned to Mitzrayim, to Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim. And they are the sorcerers and magicians who are mentioned in the Sefer of the Torah, standing against Moshe when Yahweh brought the plagues upon Mitzrayim. Bil'am and his 2 sons are the magicians that are with Pharaoh at the time that Yahweh brought the plagues on Egypt on account of using Moses. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a bit. Now we are going to read most of Jasher 76, and then we're going to move forward. So, Jasher 76, lines 1 through 48. And Moshe, the son of Amram, was still king in the land of Kush in those days, and he prospered in his kingdom, and he conducted the government of the children of Kush in justice, and in righteousness, and integrity. And all the children of Kush loved Moshe all the days that he reigned over them, and all the inhabitants of the land of Kush were greatly afraid of him. And in the 40th year of the reign of Moshe over Kush, Moshe was sitting on the royal throne, while Adonyahu, the queen, was before him, and all the nobles were sitting around him. And Adonyahu, the queen, said before the king and the princes, "What is this thing which you, the children of Kush, have done for this long time? Surely you know that 40 years that this man has reigned over Kush, and he has not approached me, nor has he served the Elohim of the children of Kush. Now therefore hear, O ye children of Kush, and let this man no more reign over you, as he is not of our flesh. Behold, Menacrus, my son, is grown up. Let him reign over you. For it is better for you to serve the son of your Adonai than to serve a stranger, slave of the king of Mizraim." And all the people and nobles of the children of Cush heard the words which Adonyahu, the queen, had spoken in their ears. And all the people were preparing until the evening. And in the morning they rose up early and made Menacrus, the son of Kikianus, son over them. And all the children of Cush were afraid to stretch forth their hand against Moshe, for Yahweh was with Moshe. And the children of Cush remembered the oath which they swore unto Moshe. Therefore they did no harm to him. But the children of Cush gave many presents to Moshe, and sent him forth with great honor. So Moshe went forth from the land of Cush, and went home, and ceased to reign over Cush. And Moshe was 66 years old when he went out of the land of Cush. For the thing was from Yahweh, for the period had arrived which he had appointed in the days of old, to bring forth Yasharel from the affliction of the children of Ham. So Moshe went to Midyan, for he was afraid to return to Mizraim on account of Pharaoh. And he went and sat at a well of water in Midyan. And the 7 daughters of Ruel, the Midiani, went out to feed their father's flocks. And they came to the well and drew their water. And they came to the well and drew water to water their father's flocks. So the shepherds of Midyan came and drove them away. And Moshe rose up and helped them and watered the flock. And they came home to their father Ruel and told him what Moshe did for them. And they said, "A Mitzri man has delivered us from the hands of the shepherds. He drew up water for us and watered the flock." And Ruel said to his daughters, "Where is he? Wherefore have you left the man?" And Ruel sent for him and fetched him and brought him home, and he ate bread with him. And Moshe related to Ruel that he had fled from Mizraim, and that he reigned 40 years over Cush, and that they afterward had taken the government from him, and sent him away with peace and honor and with presents. And when Ruel had heard the words of Moshe, Ruel said within himself, "I will put this man into a prison house, whereby I shall consolate the children of Cush, for he has fled from them." And they took and put him into a prison house, and Moshe was in prison 10 years. And while Moshe was in the prison house, Zipporah, the daughter of Ruel, took pity over him, and she supported him with bread and water all the time. And all the children of Yasharel were yet in the land of Mitzrayim, serving the Mitzrayim in all the manner of hard work. And the hand of Mitzrayim continued in severity over the children of Yasharel in those days. At that time Yahweh smote Pharaoh, the king of Mitzrayim, and he afflicted him with the plague of leprosy, from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. Owing to the cruel treatment of the children of Yasharel was this plague at the time from Yahweh upon Pharaoh, king of Mizraim. For Yahweh had hearkened to the prayer of his people and the children of Yasharel, and their cry reached him on account of their hard work. Still his anger did not turn from them, and the hand of Pharaoh was still stretched out against the children of Yasharel. And Pharaoh hardened his neck before Yahweh, and he increased his yoke over the children of Yasharel, and embittered their lives with all manner of hard work. And when Yahweh had inflicted the plague upon Pharaoh, king of Mizraim, he asked his wise men and sorcerers to cure him. And his wise men and sorcerers said unto him, that if the blood of a little children were put into the wounds, you heard that right, were put into the wounds, that he would be healed. And Pharaoh hearkened to them, and he sent his ministers to Goshen to the children of Yasharel to take their little children. And Pharaoh's ministers went and took the infants of the children of Yasharel from the bosoms of their mothers by force. And they brought them to Pharaoh daily, a child each day, and the physicians killed them and applied them to the plague. Thus did they all the days. And the number of the children which Pharaoh slew was 375. But Yahweh hearkened not to the physicians of the king of Mitzrayim, and the plague went on, increasing mightily. And Pharaoh was 10 years afflicted with that plague. Still the heart of Pharaoh was more hardened against the children of Yasharel. And at the end of 10 years, Yahweh continued to afflict Pharaoh with the destructive plagues. And Yahweh smote him with a bad tumor and sickness at the stomach, and that plague turned into a severe boil. At that time The 2 ministers of Pharaoh came from the land of Goshen, where all the children of Yasharel were, and went to the house of Pharaoh and said to him, "We have seen the children of Yasharel slacken in their work and negligent in their labor." And when Pharaoh heard the words of his ministers, his anger was kindled against the children of Yasharel exceedingly, for he was greatly grieved at his bodily pain. And he answered and said, "Now that the children of Yasharel know that I am ill, they turn and scoff at us. Now therefore harness my chariot for me, and I will betake myself to Goshen, and will see the scoff of the children of Yasharel, with which they are deriding me." So his servants harnessed the chariot for him, and they took him and made him ride upon a horse, for he was not able to ride of himself. And he took with him 10 horsemen and 10 footmen, and went to the children of Yasharel to Goshen. And when they had come to the border of Mitzrayim, the king's horse passed into a narrow place, elevated in the hollow part of the vineyard, fenced on both sides, the low plain country being on the other side. And the horse ran rapidly in that place and pressed each other. And the horses ran rapidly in that place and pressed each other. And the horses pressed the king's horse, and the king's horse fell into the low plain while the king was riding upon it. And when he fell, the chariot turned over the king's face, and the horse lay upon the king. And the king cried out, for his flesh was very sore. And the flesh of the king was torn from him, and his bones were broken, and he could not ride, for this thing was from Yahweh to him. For Yahweh had heard the cries of his people, the children of Yasharel, in their affliction. And his servants carried him upon their shoulders, a little at a time, and they brought him back to Mitzrayim. And the horsemen who were with him came also back to Mitzrayim, and they placed him in his bed, and the king knew that his end was come to die. So Aparonith, the queen, his woman, came and cried before the king. And the king wept a great weeping with her. And all his nobles and servants came on that day and saw the king in that affliction, and wept a great weeping with him. So the wife that they gave Moses while he reigned over Kush was the same one who dethroned him. She was upset that it had been 40 years and Moses had never touched her, because she was a strange woman. She was not a Hebrew woman who followed Yahweh, so he did not touch her. Excuse me. So she said, "Hey, this guy rules over us, and he's never touched me, and he does not even serve the same Elohim that we serve. So let my son rule in his stead, and not this stranger." But they were scared to lift up their hand against Moses, because they knew that Yahweh was with him, and they also made an oath to Moses as well. So they sent him away honorably, and with gifts and all kinds of stuff. And then Moses finally makes it his way into the land of Midyan. And then next we see his first encounter with the woman who would become his wife eventually. But when Zipporah's father, Ruel, finds out Moses had fled from Egypt, and that he didn't believe that he was the king of Kush either. He thought that he'd fled from the children of Kush as well, so he imprisoned Moses. But Zipporah supported him with bread and water for 10 years. And at this time, Yahweh smote Pharaoh with all kinds of diseases and boils and all kinds of different ailments. And the sicker that he got, the harder Pharaoh afflicted the children of Yasharel. And the sorcerers said to Pharaoh that if they put a little bit of children's blood into Pharaoh's wounds, that it would heal him. Now, how sick is that? They want to go sacrifice children and put it in the bloods of his wounds, and they said that that would heal him. So they took babies by force from their mothers, Hebrew babies, and they killed them, and they sacrificed them. 375 infants were murdered. But their blood magic did not work. You cannot outpower the Most High. His wonders are infinite. And once again, some officers of Pharaoh some officers come to Pharaoh and say the children of Yasharel have become negligent in their work. So Pharaoh afflicts them even harder. And Pharaoh was going to go over to the land of Goshen to see what the children of Yasharel were up to. So they put him on his horse, but he wasn't able to ride. And then he fell off of his horse and his chariot both fell on top of him, and his flesh was torn from his body, and his bones were broken. And it was Yahweh who did this thing to Pharaoh. So they took him home to let him die. All right, moving forward, we are back in Exodus. Now we are on chapter 2, lines 16 through 25. Now the priest of Midyan had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moshe stood up and helped them, and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel their father, he said, How is it that ye are come so soon today? And they said, A Mitzri delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock. And he said unto his daughters, And where is he? Why is it that ye have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread. And Moshe was content to dwell with the man. And he gave Moshe Zipporah his daughter, and she bore him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a land. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Mitzrayim died, and the children of Yasharel sighed by reason of their bondage. And they cried, and their cry came up to Elohim by reason of the bondage. And Elohim heard their groaning, and Elohim remembered his covenant with Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. And Elohim looked upon the children of Yasharel, and Elohim had respect unto them. So now we're going to read a small piece of Jasher chapter 77, and then we're going to get to chapter 3 of Exodus. So Jasher 77:25 through 51. And Elohim saw the burden of the children of Yasharel, and that their heavy work in those days, and he was determined to deliver them. And Moshe, the son of Amram, was still confined in the dungeon in those days, in the house of Reuel the Midyanite. And Zipporah, the daughter of Reuel, did support him with food secretly, day by day. And Moshe was confined in the dungeon in the house of Reuel for 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, which was the first year of the reign of Pharaoh over Mitzrayim, in the place of his father, Zipporah said to her father, Reuel, No person inquires or seeks after the Ivri man, whom you did bind in prison now 10 years. Now therefore, if it seem good in your sight, let us send and see whether he is living or dead. But her father knew not that she had supported him. And Reuel her father answered and said to her, Has ever such a thing happened to a man, that he should be shut up in a prison without food for 10 years, and that he should live? And Zipporah answered her father, saying, Surely you have heard that the Elohim of the Ivrim is great and awful, and does wonders for them at all times. He it is who delivered Avraham from the Kasdim, and Yitzchak from the sword of his father, and Yaakov from the angel of Yahweh, who wrestled with him at the ford of Jabbok. Also, with this man has he done many things. He delivered him from the river in Mitzrayim, and from the sword of Pharaoh, and from the children of Kush. So also he can deliver him from famine and make him live. And the thing seemed good in the sight of Reuel, and he did according to the word of his daughter. And he sent to the dungeon to ascertain what became of Moshe. And he saw, and behold, the man Moshe was living in the dungeon, standing upon his feet, praising and praying to the Elohim of his ancestors. And Reuel commanded Moshe to be brought out of the dungeon. So they shaved him, and changed his prison garments, and ate bread. And afterward Moshe went into the garden of Reuel, which was behind the house, and he there prayed to Yahweh Eloheinu, who had done mighty wonders for him. And it was that while he prayed and looked opposite to him, and behold, a sapphire stick was placed in the ground, which was planted in the midst of the garden. And he approached the stick, and he looked, and behold, the name of Yahweh Elohim Sabaoth was engraved thereon, written and developed upon the stick. And he read it, and stretched forth his hand, and he plucked it like a forest tree from the thicket, and the stick was in his hand. And this is the stick which all the works of our Elohim were performed after he had created heaven and earth and all the host of them, seas and rivers and all their fish. And when Elohim had driven Adam from the Garden of Eden, he took the stick in his hand and went and tilled the ground from which he was taken. And the stick came down to Noach, and was given to Shem and his descendants, until it came into the hand of Avraham the Ivri. And when Avraham had given the stick to his son Yitzchak, he also gave him, and when he given all he had to his son Yitzchak, he also gave him the stick. And when Yaakov had fled to Padan Aram, he took it into his hand. And when he returned to his father, he had not left it behind him. Also, when he went down to Mitzrayim, he took it into his hand, and he gave it to Yosef, one portion above his brethren. For Yaakov had taken it by force from his brother Esau. And after the death of Yosef, the nobles of Mitzrayim came into the house of Yosef, and the stick came into the hand of Reuel the Midyanite. And when he went out of Mitzrayim, he took it in his hand, and he planted it in his garden. And all the mighty men of the Canaanim tried to pluck it when they endeavored to get Zipporah, his daughter, but they were unsuccessful. So that stick remained planted in the garden of Reuel until he came who had a right to it and took it. And when Reuel saw the stick in the hand of Moshe, he wondered at it, and he gave him his daughter Zipporah for a woman. Oh no. Oops, hold on guys. I just exited out of my thing. Alright. So now we are moving on to chapter 3. Hold on. Okay, so now we are on to chapter 3 of Exodus. Now, this chapter I didn't have any specific notes for, so we are just going to read through this chapter completely, and then we're going to move along to chapter 4. So, Exodus chapter 3, lines 1 through 22. Alright. Now Moshe kept the flock of Yithro, and Yithro is another name for Reuel, his father-in-law, the priest of Midyan. And he led the flock to the backside of the desert, and he came to the mountain of Elohim, even to Horeb. And the angel of Yahweh appeared unto him in a flame out of the fire of the midst of a thorn bush. And he looked, and behold, the thorn bush burned with fire, and the thorn bush was not consumed. And Moshe said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the thorn bush is not burnt. And when Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, Elohim called out unto him in the midst of the thorn bush, and he said, Moshe, Moshe. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither, put off your shoes from off your feet, for the place whereon you stand is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the Elohai of your fathers, the Elohai of Abraham, the Elohai of Yitzchak, and the Elohai of Yaakov. And Moshe hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon Elohim. And Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Mitzrayim, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of Mitzrayim, to bring them up out of the land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanim, and the Hittim, and the Amorim, and the Perazim, and the Hivim, and the Yuvasim. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Yasharel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Mitzrayim oppresses them. Come now, therefore, and I will send you unto Pharaoh, that you may bring forth my people, the children of Yasharel, out of Mitzrayim. And Moshe said unto Elohim, Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Yasharel out of Mitzrayim? And he said, Certainly I will be with you, and this shall be a sign unto you that I have sent you. When you have brought forth the people out of Mitzrayim, ye shall serve Elohim upon this mountain. And Moshe said unto Elohim, Behold, when I come unto the children of Yasharel, and say unto them, The Elohai of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And Elohim said unto El Moshe, Ahaya, Ashir, Ahaya. I am that I am. And now, we'll have to get into this another time, but what is interesting about that phrase is Ahaya, Ashir, Ahaya. It doesn't just mean I am that I am. Ahaya is a all-purpose state of being verb in Hebrew. It doesn't just mean I am that I am. It means I am that I am, I was who I was, and I will be who I will be. It is an all-purpose state of being verb. So, we'll have to get to that another time, and I will show you why that is really cool. So, and he said, Thus shall you say unto the children of Yasharel, Ahaya has sent me unto you. And Elohim said, moreover, unto El Moshe, Thus shall you say unto the children of Yasharel, Yahweh Elohai of your fathers, the Elohai of Abraham, the Elohai of Yitzchak, and the Elohai of Yaakov, has sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my mention unto all generations. Go and gather the elders of Yasharel together, and say unto them, Yahweh Elohai of your fathers, the Elohai of Abraham, the Elohai of Yitzchak and Yaakov, appeared unto me, saying, I have surely visited you, and seen that which is done unto you in Mitzrayim. And I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Mitzrayim, unto the land of the Canaanim, and of the Hittim, and of the Amorim, and the Perazim, and of the Shivim, and of the Yuvasim, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. And they shall hearken hearken to your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Yasharel, unto the king of Mitzrayim, and ye shall say unto him, Yahweh Elohai of the Ivrim has met with us, and now let us go, we beseech you, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh Eloheinu. And I am sure that the king of Mitzrayim will not let you go, no, not by a mighty hand. And I will stretch out my hand and smite Mitzrayim with all my wonders which I do in the midst thereof. And after that he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Mitzrayim. And it shall come to pass that when ye go, ye shall not go empty, but every woman shall borrow of her neighbor, and of her that sojourns in her house, jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment, and ye shall put them upon your sons and upon your daughters, and ye shall spoil the Mitzrayim. Okay, so there's a few things we're going to discuss here in chapter 4, which we're moving on to now. And we should get through that pretty quickly. And we're going to read lines 1 through 6, and then we're going to go over them, and then we will read the rest of the chapter through. So Exodus 4, lines 1 through 6. And Moshe answered and said, But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, Yahweh has not appeared unto you. And Yahweh said unto him, What is that in your hand? And he said, A rod. And he said, Cast it to the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moshe fled from before it. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, Put forth your hand, and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand, and he caught it, and it became a rod in his hand, that they may believe that Yahweh Elohai of their fathers, the Elohai of Abraham, the Elohai of Yitzchak, and the Elohai of Yaakov, has appeared unto you. And Yahweh said furthermore unto him, Put now your hand into your bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. So now we're actually going to move back again to the book of Jasher, and we're going to kind of go a little bit backwards here. So now we are in Jasher 78, and we're going to read lines 7 through 16. In those days, Moshe, the son of Amram, in Midyan, took Zipporah, the daughter of Ruel the Midiani, for a woman. And Zipporah walked in the ways of the daughters of Yaakov. She was nothing short of the righteousness of Sarah, Rivkah, and Rachel, and Leah. And Zipporah conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Gershom. For he said, I was a stranger in a foreign land. But he circumcised not his foreskin at the command of Ruel his father-in-law. And she conceived again and bore a son, but circumcised his foreskin, and called his name Eliezer. For Moshe said, because the Elohim of my fathers was my help, and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim, greatly increased the labor of the children of Yasharel in those days, and continued to make his yoke heavier upon the children of Yasharel. And he ordained a proclamation to be made in Mitzrayim, saying, Give no more straw to the people to make bricks with. Let them go and gather themselves straw as they can find it. And the tally of the bricks which they shall make, let them give each day, and diminish nothing from them, for they are idle in their work. And the children of Yasharel heard this, and they mourned and sighed and cried unto Yahweh on account of the bitterness of their souls. And Yahweh heard the cries of the children of Yasharel, and saw the oppression with which the Mitzrayim oppressed them. And Yahweh was jealous of his people and his inheritance, and heard their voice. And he resolved to take them out of the affliction of Mitzrayim, to give them the land of Canaan for a possession. So we learn Zipporah, Moses' woman, is a righteous woman of Yahweh, and she bore Moses a son, and they named him Gershom, but they did not circumcise him. So I want you to remember this, because we're going to talk about this in a few. Because Zipporah's father, Ruel, he asked them to not do that. So then she conceived again, and she bore another son, and named him Eliezer, and him they did circumcise. So next we see Pharaoh give the order that the Egyptians are no longer to help the Hebrews get bricks or to gather straw to help them make the bricks. From now on, they had to make and fetch their own bricks, and they had to make their own mortar, they had to fetch their own straw. They didn't get any more help. All right, now Jasher 78, lines 8 through 12. And Moshe rose up to go to Mitzrayim, and he took his woman and his sons with him. And he was at an inn in the road, and the angel of Elohim came down and sought an occasion against him. And he wished to kill him on account of his firstborn son, because he had not circumcised him, and had transgressed the covenant which Yahweh had made with Abraham. For Moshe had hearkened to the words of his father-in-law, which he had spoken to him, not to circumcise his firstborn son. Therefore he circumcised him not. And Zipporah saw the angel of Yahweh seeking an occasion against Moshe, and she knew that this thing was owing to his not having circumcised her son Gershom. And Zipporah hastened and took of the sharp rock stones that was there, and she circumcised her son, and delivered her man and her son from the hand of the angel of Yahweh. So in a moment, we're going to see that Yahweh's angel was allowed to try and afflict Moses because he listened to his father-in-law and he didn't circumcise his son. And we know that Yahweh, he commanded them to do this. So because of that, the angel was like, oh, well, your servant there, he didn't obey one of your commandments, so let me go have his son. But as we see, Zipporah, she knew what was going on, and she took a rock and she circumcised her son right there, and she delivered her son and Moses from that evil. So now we are going to read the rest of chapter 4 all the way through. So Exodus 4, lines 7 through 31. And he said, put your hand into your bosom again. Remember, we read previously, he put his hand into his bosom, and they took it out, and it was white and leprous. So now he says, put your hand into your bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and he plucked it out of his bosom, and behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. And it came to pass, if they will not believe you, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these two signs, neither hearken unto your voice, that you shall take the water of the river, and pour it upon the dry land. And the water which you take out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. And Moshe said unto Yahweh, O Adonai, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since you have spoken unto your servant, but I am slow of speech, and of a slow tongue. And Yahweh said unto him, Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the dumb, or the deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I, Yahweh? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall say. And he said, O Adonai, send, I pray you, by the hand of him whom you will send. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Moshe. And he said, Is not Aharon the Levite your brother? I know he can speak well. And also, behold, he comes forth to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. And you shall speak unto him, and put the words in his mouth. And I will be with your mouth, and with his mouth, and I will teach you what ye shall do. And he shall be your spokesman unto the people. And he shall be to you instead of a mouth, and you shall be to him instead of Elohim. And you shall take this rod in your hand, wherewith you shall do signs. And Moshe went and returned to Yithro, his father-in-law, and said unto him, Let me go, I pray you, and return unto my brethren which are in Mizraim, and see whether they be yet alive. And Yithro said to Moshe, Go in peace. And Yahweh said unto Moshe in Midyan, Go, return into Mitzrayim, for all the men are dead which sought your life. And Moshe took his woman and his sons, and set them upon an ass, and he returned to the land of Mitzrayim. And Moshe took the rod of Elohim in his hand. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, When you go to return into Mitzrayim, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh which I have put in your hand. But I will harden his heart, that he shall not let the people go. And you shall say unto Pharaoh, Thus says Yahweh, Yasharel is my son, even my firstborn. And I say unto you, Let my son go, that he may serve me. And if you refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay your son, even your firstborn. And it came to pass by the way in the inn, that Yahweh met him, and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone, and cut off the foreskin of her son, and cast it at his feet, and said, Surely a bloody man are you to me. So he let him go. Then she said, A bloody man you are, because of the circumcision. And Yahweh said to Aharon, Go into the wilderness to meet Moshe. And he went and met him at the mount of Elohim, and kissed him. And Moshe told Aharon all the words that Yahweh all the words of Yahweh who had sent him, and all the signs which he had commanded him. And Moshe and Aharon went and gathered together the elders of the children of Jasher. And Aharon spoke all the words which Yahweh had spoken unto Moshe, and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that Yahweh had visited the children of Jasher, and that he had looked upon their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshipped. So, now I want to go over lines 27 through 32. Let's read those over again really quickly. It says, Yahweh said to Aharon, go into the wilderness to meet Moshe. And he went, and he met him in the mount of Elohim, and kissed him. And Moshe told Aharon all the words of Yahweh who had sent him, and all the signs which he commanded him. And Moshe and Aharon went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Jasher. And Aharon spoke all the words which Yahweh had spoken unto Moshe, and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that Yahweh had visited the children of Jasher, and that he had looked upon their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped. So now let's read Psalms 106, 12 through 16. Then believed they his words. They sang his praise. They soon forgot his works. They waited not for his counsel, but lusted exceedingly in the wilderness, and tempted El in the desert. And he gave them their request, but sent leanness into their soul. They envied Moshe also in the camp, and Aharon the Kodeshi of Yahweh. They were lukewarm. They were lukewarm people. They were hard-headed, and they were rebellious, and they didn't want to listen. For a while they listened and they believed, but not long they went astray. Luke 8:13. They on the rock are they. They on the rock are they, which when they hear, receive the word with joy. And these have no root, which for a while believe, and in time of temptation fall away. So this is the parable of the seed. The seed that fell on the rocks are those who hear the word, and they receive it with joy in their heart. They love it at first, but they have no root. There is no foundation for their faith. They do not have the Ruach HaKodesh helping them, so they fizzle out, and temptation leads them back astray. All right, moving forward onto chapter 5 now. I think we're going to be able to finish, guys. Yay. So now we're on to chapter 5, and we're going to go to line 1 of chapter 6. So we're going to start with lines 1 through 2. Exodus 5, lines 1 through 2. And afterward, Moshe and Aharon went in, and they told Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh Elohai of Jasher, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, who is Yahweh, that I should obey his voice to let Jasher go? I know not Yahweh, neither will I let Jasher go. Now I want to read those 2 lines, and I want to also read line 3 from the Aramaic Targums. So for those of you who don't know, the Aramaic Targums are some of the oldest translations that we have of the scriptures to date. They are even older than the Septuagint. So I want to read Exodus 5, 1 through 3 from the Aramaic Targums. It says there, after this, Moshe and Aharon went in unto Pharaoh, and said, thus saith Yahweh, the Elohai of Jasher, release my people, that they may make unto me a festival in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, the name of Yahweh is not made known to me, that I should receive his word to release Jasher. I have not found written in the book of the angels the name of Yahweh. Of him I am not afraid, neither will I release Jasher. So it is interesting that Pharaoh says that his name is not written in the book of the angels. So to me, this book that Pharaoh has, it sounds like some kind of book of like esoteric knowledge that was given to them from the fallen watchers, from the fallen angels. And of course, they don't include Yahweh's name in there. They hate him. They wish to accuse him, and they don't want people to truly know about him or truly know his name. So it's no coincidence that his name was not written in this book of fallen angels and demons. All right. Now we're going to continue reading chapter 5, and I want you to remember what we learned earlier, that the sorcerers that are dwelling with Pharaoh at this time are Bil'am and his two sons, Janis and Jamberes, and we're going to get to them in a minute. And the only two I want you to keep in mind, too, that his Bil'am's sons, their names, Janis and Jamberes, the only two places that their names are ever mentioned in Scripture is in the book of Jasher and the Aramaic Targums. Now I'm going to show you why reading the book of Jasher and the Targums, to me, is important. Because we will see later that Paul knew who the sons of Bil'am were, and he knew Bil'am's sons by their name. And like I said, there's only two places in all of Scripture that their names are ever mentioned, and that is in the book of Jasher and in the Aramaic Targums. All right, now we are on to Exodus 5, lines 3 through 23. And they said, the Elohai of the Ephraim has met with us. Let us go, we pray you, 3 days, journey into the desert, and sacrifice unto Yahweh Eloheinu, lest he fall upon us with pestilence, or with the sword. And the king of Mitzrayim said unto them, Wherefore do ye, Moses and Aharon, let the people from their works, and get you unto your burdens. And Pharaoh said, Behold, the people of the land now are many, and ye make them rest from their burdens. And Pharaoh commanded the same day the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, Ye shall no more give this people straw to make bricks. As heretofore, let them go and gather straw for themselves. And the tally of the bricks which they did make heretofore, ye shall lay upon them. Ye shall not diminish aught thereof. For they be idle. Therefore they cry, saying, Let us go and sacrifice to our Elohim. Let there be more work laid upon the men, that they may labor therein, and let them not regard vain words. And the taskmasters of the people went out, and their officers, and they spoke to the people, saying, Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go ye, get your straw where you can find it. Ye not aught of your work shall be diminished. So the people were scattered abroad throughout the land of Mitzrayim to gather stubble instead of straw. And the taskmasters hasted them, saying, Fulfill your works, your daily tasks, as when there was straw. And the officers of the children of Jasher, which Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten, and demanded, Wherefore have ye not fulfilled your task in making brick, both yesterday and today, as heretofore? And the officers of the children of Jasher came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, Wherefore deal you thus with your servants? There is no straw given unto your servants. And they say to us, Make brick. And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. But he said, Ye are idle. Therefore ye say, Let us go do and sacrifice. Let us go and do sacrifice to Yahweh. Go therefore now and work, for there shall be no straw to be given to you, yet shall ye deliver the tally of bricks. And the officers of the children of Jasher did see that they were in evil case, after it was said, Ye shall not minish aught from your bricks of your daily task. And they met Moses and Aharon, who stood in the way, as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said unto them, Yahweh look upon you and judge, because you have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to slay us. And Moshe returned unto Yahweh, and said, Adonai, wherefore have you entreated me to this people? Wherefore have you entreated so evil? Let me start over. Adonai, wherefore have you so evil entreated this people? Why is it that you have sent me? For since I have came to Pharaoh and speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, neither have you delivered your people at all. Now, let's see what the book of Jasher says. Jasher 79, lines 21 through 31. And when they came to the king's gate, 2 young lions were confined there with iron instruments, and no person went out or came in from before them, unless those whom the king ordered to come. And when the conjurers came and withdrew the lions by their incantations, and thus brought them to the king, and Moshe hastened and lifted up the stick, and lifted up the stick upon the lions, and he loosed them. And Moshe and Aharon came into the king's house. The lions also came with them in joy, and they followed them and rejoiced as a dog rejoices over his Adonai when he comes in from the field. So can you imagine that? So Pharaoh has these lions, and they're under the magician Bil'am and his sons. They're under his spell, under their spell. And here comes Moses and Aharon, and they see the lions, and they loose them from their spell, and now the lions are following Moses and Aharon around like a puppy dog. And Pharaoh sees this, and he is mad. So, and when Pharaoh saw this thing, he was astonished at it, and he was greatly terrified at the report, for their appearance was like the appearance of the children of Elohim. And Pharaoh said to Moshe, "What do you require?" And they answered him, saying, "Yahweh Elohim of the Ephraim has sent us to you to say, Send forth my people, that they may serve me." And when Pharaoh heard the words, he was greatly terrified before them. And he said to them, "Go today, and come back to me tomorrow." And they did according to the word of the king. And when they had gone, Pharaoh sent for Bil'am the magician, and to Janis and Jamberes his sons, and to all the magicians and conjurers and counselors which belonged to the king. And they all came and sat before the king. And the king told them all the words which Moshe and his brother Aharon had spoken to them. And the magicians said to the king, "But how came the men to you on account of the lions which were confined at the gate?" And the king said, "Because they lifted up their rod against the lions and loosed them, and came to me. And the lions also rejoiced at them, as a dog rejoices to meet his Adonai." And Bil'am, the son of Beor, the magician, answered the king, saying, These are none else than magicians like ourselves. Now therefore send for them, and let them come, and we will try them. And the king did so. So in the Targums, the chapter breaks are a little bit different. So this is found in chapter 6, and I'm not sure of the lines because in the Targums, on the online Targums, it's not numbered, but I can leave the link that I use for the online Targums. So if you go into Exodus chapter 6 in the Targums and you read what we just read, you can read it here too. It says, "And Moshe and Aharon went to Pharaoh, and did as Yahweh had commanded. And Aharon threw down the rod before the sight of Pharaoh, and before the sight of his servants. And it came back as a basilisk, which is some kind of serpent, a very large serpent at that. But Pharaoh called the Hakims and the magicians, and they also, Janis and Jamberes, the magicians of Mizraim, did the same by their burnings of divination. They threw down each man his rod, and they became basilisk, I think that's how you pronounce it. But wherefore changed to be what they were at first. And the rod of Aharon swallowed up their rods, and the disposition of Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not hearken to them as Yahweh had said. And lastly, Paul, like I said, Paul knew who Janis and Jamberes were. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, lines 8 through 9. Now, as Janis and Jamberes withstood Moshe, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the faith. But they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as theirs also was. So, Janis and Jamberes were magicians, sorcerers, and they were corrupt, and they didn't have any truth. They had no faith, and they didn't prosper, but their folly and their error will be manifested unto all men. And in a time when we see such a huge rise in New Age spiritualism and Wicca and witchcraft and paganism and Satanism, it is drawing everybody in. It drew me in, and I'm glad that I got really, really far away from it. So, all right, now we are going to go over line 1 of chapter 6, and then we're going to read a couple things from the Targums, and then we're going to wrap this up. All right, so Exodus 6, line 1. Then Yahweh said unto Moshe, Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his land. So we're going to read a few passages from the Targums, and we're going to make some connections. And the first one is chapter 1 with Janis and Jamberes and the Hebrew midwives. Remember, I told you the Hebrew midwives that Pharaoh commands to kill the Hebrew boys. We later learned that was Moses' mother and his sister. So let's read this. In the Targums, this is in Exodus 1. Why have you done this thing and have saved the children? And the midwives said to Pharaoh, the Ivri women are not as the Mizri, for they are sturdy or courageous and wise-minded. Before the midwives come to them, they lift up their eyes in prayer, supplicating mercy before their Father who is in heaven, who hear the voice of their prayer. And at once they are heard and bring forth and are delivered in peace. Because they are vivacious, and before the midwife come to them, they pray before their Father who is in heaven, and he answers them, and they bring forth. And Yahweh did good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and prevailed greatly. And forasmuch the midwives feared before Yahweh, and they obtained for themselves a good name unto the ages, and the word of Yahweh upbuilded for them a royal house, even the house of the high priesthood. Because the midwives feared before Yahweh, they obtained for themselves a good name in the midst of the ages. And he made unto themselves houses, and the house of the Levites, and the house of the high priesthood. So, as I was talking about earlier, I talked about this. We learned that he didn't build them up physical houses. He didn't give them an actual house. He built up for them spiritual houses, the house of the priesthood, the house of the Levites. And now we are going to look at the account where Moses smites the Egyptian man in the Targums. So in the Targums, this is in Exodus chapter 2. And it says, in those days, when Moshe was grown up, he went forth to his brethren, and he saw the anguish of their souls and the greatness of their toil. And he saw a Mizrite strike a Hebrew man of his brethren. And Moshe turned and considered in the wisdom of his mind, and understood that in no generation would there arise a proselyte from that Mizrite man, and that none of his children would ever be converted. And he smote the Mizrite, and buried him in the sand. And Moshe, by the Ruach HaKodesh, considering both the young men, saw that, behold, no proselyte would ever spring forth from that Mizrite. So he killed him and hid him in the sand. And proselyte was like no righteous seed would ever come from this man. And lastly, we're going to look at the circumcision account. In the Targums, this is in Exodus chapter 4, and I actually put that you can read this in the 6th paragraph of Exodus 4. So it says, but it was on the way in the place of lodging that the angel of Elohim met him and sought to kill him, because Gershom, his son, had not been circumcised, inasmuch as Yithro, his father-in-law, had not permitted him to circumcise him, but Eleazar had been circumcised by an agreement between them two. And Zipporah took a stone and circumcised the foreskin of Gershom her son, and brought the severed part to the feet of the angel, the destroyer, and said, the husband sought to circumcise, but the father-in-law obstructed him. And now let this blood of the circumcision atone for my husband. And she circumcised the foreskin of her son, and brought it before... Oh, did I copy the same thing twice? I did. Oh, no, I did not. And she circumcised the foreskin of her son, and brought before the feet of the destroyer, and said, the husband could have circumcised, but the father-in-law did not permit him. But now let the blood of this circumcision atone for the fault of this husband. And the destroying angel desisted from him. So that Zipporah gave thanks and said, how lovely is the blood of this circumcision that has delivered my husband from the angel of destruction. And when the destroyer had ceased from him, Zipporah gave thanks. Oh, I copied the same thing twice again. Oh, no, this is and how lovely is the blood of the circumcision, which hath saved my husband from the hand of the angel of death. Okay, so, all right, brothers and sisters, that is the end of this week's Torah portion. Next week, we will be getting into chapter 6. We will start on line 2, and we are going to try to make it, I think, next week to chapter 9. We'll see how far we get with things. So I will let you guys know. All right, let's go ahead and close with a prayer, you guys. Yahweh, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and I pray that you continue to instruct me in your truth as well as my viewers, and keep your remnant under your wings, Yahweh. We thank your Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, and we are so grateful that he made it possible for us to come back into covenant with you. And we are so blessed for him to send us his comforting spirit, the same spirit that dwells within you, Yahweh. And you are the most wonderful, Yahweh, and your loving kindness is immeasurable. And we praise your name, Yahweh Sevoth. And we pray for your mercy and to be counted worthy. In Yahushua's name we pray. Amen. All right, guys, I will see you again next week. Enjoy the rest of your Shabbat and Shalom.